I'm so excited that I finally figured out how I can build a 2-in-1 compost sift. This design would allow me to detach the part and replace it with a different sift so that I can use it to sift my worm castings or regular compost whenever I need. To make this project possible, I'd like to thank Centurion for sponsoring today's episode. Centurion specializes in quality gardening and landscaping tools to help you get your job done more efficiently and making it affordable. They sent me a bunch of tools that I can't wait to do more projects to share with you guys in the future, but for today's episode, I'm going to be using the Triple Cut 7-inch folding saw. I told them that I need to build a compost sift and I need to cut wood. This is what they sent me. I thought this thing can only cut branches because that's what I usually see people do. You know, you saw and cut those branches on the trees. So when they sent me this, I was like, I need to cut a 2x4, and they said it would work. So I guess we'll see how it goes. Since a 2x4, I would imagine it being more thick and solid. Anyway, we're gonna get started. Just made a little bit of space here. Let me show you the supplies that you'll need. Using these 2x4s, I'm just using some scrap materials, and the size actually works out perfectly for me. But when you're looking for building, a size for you, make sure that it's something easy for you to pick up and kind of shake as you're sifting through the compost. Another thing is about storing for me is about making it big enough so that's actually more efficient when I'm working with it, but also storing away is not too big so that I can put it away easily. Or if you're going to places on top of a tote or a wheelbarrow to sift, you can also build it for the appropriate size that you need. This piece is going to help me sandwich the wire mesh onto the frame. This is just something I have laying around also. I'm going to cut this up into 4 pieces to use. So I'm pretty much using scrap materials, things that already have some tools and screws that I already have on hand. But the only thing I really actually invested in are a pair of handles for making my life even easier with the sift. I'll show you more on that later. The thing I spent the most on this project were these little inserts for the screws, because that is the part that's going to help me attach and remove the wired mesh whenever needed. My composts have been sitting in that tumbler for a long time, so I really want to get this project started. I ended up paying a little more for the inserts, but you can definitely check for better prices online and at the local hardware stores near you. Here are the 2-wire mesh I like to use. This is the 1/2 inch. Most people use this one to sift compost. And then I have the 1/4 inch in case I want to sift something finer or even worm castings. Cut these to size, or if you're unsure, cut it slightly larger, maybe an inch extra, just in case. You can always cut away the extras. The part you cut out is pretty sharp, so you can use duct tape to wrap around the border. All right, let's see if this actually works. Obviously, I don't do this often. Okay, now let's get some work done. It was a bit hard to get started, but once it gets going, it's actually pretty fast. And it's really lightweight. It makes it so much easier for me to use than a regular saw. Woo! Did it! Here are the 2 pieces. I'm actually really surprised. It's smoother than I was expecting, because seeing the saw here, it looks like it's pretty rough, but it went pretty fast. I know I'm probably pretty slow compared to most people. I don't do this stuff often, so even giving me a proper saw, I would be really slow. Like, I remember the tall raised bed took me 3.5 hours to use some sort of Japanese saw, cutting 8 pieces or something. So I'm definitely not the right person to be judging this, but what I can say is this pruning saw is pretty heavy duty. Here's the size of my frame. Next, I'm going to measure this out so I know how much of this thinner piece I would need to cut. Now that I got all these pieces cut, I'm going to lay it out and put the mesh on top. That way I can figure out exactly how much of the mesh I need to fold to get the correct size. I just want this piece to be about maybe 1/4 to 1/2 an inch away from the border. Normally when we make a compost sift, you actually don't need to fold any of the sides up, but I am going to be switching out these mesh, which means I'll be handling them, you know, every now and then. So I don't want any of these sharp edges to hurt me. I already made my mark here where to fold. Looks like it's about 4 squares in. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just gonna use this to press it up. So I'm just going to press this down. To make it a little easier to fold, I'm just going to snip off this corner piece. Right about here. Now I can fold this back in. Do the same to the other side, fold it in. This is what it looks like so far. See how this wire, this piece is a little bit away from the border. It's not perfect, but it's okay, as long as it's not sticking out, so it won't cut you. These pieces are gonna go like that. This is pretty similar to what it will look like when it's finished. For now, I need to spray some eco wood treatment to actually make this whole thing look more cohesive, because you can see my scrap wood were from different times, so the colors are all different. I've used this treatment from my dragon fruit trellis to some other things around the garden. I actually really like that weathered look it gives after you spray it, but the actual reason you want to use this treatment is when you want your wooden pieces to last a little longer outdoor. But feel free to skip this step if you want and go straight to putting the frame together. All right, today I'm going to be finishing up the compost sift. Now I'm going to pre-drill the holes before I treat the wood, because after the wood is treated, it's going to turn into that weathered gray look. And if I pre-drill the holes after treating the wood, this color is going to show through that gray surface. To put the pieces together, I'm going to be using these screws. It looks pretty overkill, I know, but this is all I have right now. I don't want to go out and buy like a whole other box. So yeah, just make sure you have screws that are long enough to put the pieces together. When this goes through the wood, I want this to actually sit flat with the wood. To do that, I'm going to use a Forstner bit to pre-drill the holes. Got my markings. Next one. Got these so the screws can sink in like that. I'm going to do this on the other piece. Okay, the pieces are dried. I like the distressed look. It's going to continue to darken over time. Now we are going to put the frame together. When we're putting this together, you can use screws like this rather than this, but I don't have enough of these. I'm going to need 8 screws, so this is what I'm going with. Yeah, that's pretty straight, right? It's probably easier if you had someone to hold this. Otherwise, you can probably push this end against the wall or something to keep it still. Let me clamp this together, actually. I'm going to crank it by hand. Yeah, so much better. These 2 pieces are scrap wood. I'm just clamping them together to help keep this piece in place when I'm putting the screws in. To put the last piece together, I've gone ahead and pre-drilled and put these screws on. I also pre-drilled this piece and this piece. Now it's time to assemble. Don't tighten these screws until you're completely done assembling. Now that I got all the screws in, it's time to tighten. This is my frame. It's not perfect, but it's definitely solid. I'm just putting some masking tape to secure these 2 pieces. Same thing, just going to mark where I want the pilot holes to be. These are what I'm going to be putting in. The insert goes into the 2x4, and then the smaller piece on top is going to have the screw just going like right through it. This is a drill bit with the closest diameter to this screw. All right. So now the screw can go right through it like that. Now I'm going to drill a hole for this insert, and I've marked it with the masking tape how deep I need to drill it. Go slow. Okay. Oh crap. This one broke. This kind is no good. I actually went out to a different hardware store to pick up these ones. This one looks a lot more solid. The price was way cheaper as well. So let's continue. This is so much better than the other one. Awesome. Got my screws. Yay! Let me finish up here and get back to you guys. Now we are going to test this out. I just made cuts all around the inserts. This would make it much easier when we put this piece on. Now it's time to switch this out. I'm using 1 1/4 inch screws. I think it's on pretty good. If you want it to be super tight, you can add a couple more screws on here. Next is going to be the fun part. I'm going to be adding handles. All right, it's time to sift compost. Now I'm going to get some compost with the Shorty Shovel D-Grip round point. This fits in the tumbler perfectly. Wow, the compost is really wet. We just had rain this morning. I think this is way too wet to be sifting right now. Let's wait a couple of days for the compost to dry out a bit, then we'll give the sift a test. It's been a couple of days. This compost have been laid out to dry a bit. Very quickly with a 1/2 inch sift, I was able to get these sorted. This is going to go back in the tumbler. You can see how nice this compost is. If I want it even finer, say for my starter plants, I can use the other mesh. For the finer mesh, you could use it to sift your worm castings as well. Maybe you can see it better. All right, I think this is good enough. The 1/2 inch sift, I was able to get this avocado seed and mango seed shells out. And then the 1/4 inch sift. This is what we're left with, some beautiful, rich compost. Thank you guys for joining me out here to build this out. And thank you to Centurion for sponsoring today's episode. If you guys want to check out some of the gardening and landscaping tools, I will put their link in the description box. For plants and seeds, don't forget to check out my website and subscribe to this channel. To see more composting videos, click on that one. I'll see you right back here in the next one.